So what is this madness? We're going to talk about a new movie?
We are. We're going to talk about a movie while it is still culturally timely to do so. We don't do this often.
No, we don't. Getting us both to the theater. I went to the theater.
I went to a theater as well, like a public theater.
Public theater, not my theater.
Do you know how long it's been since I've done that?
How long?
I don't even know. It has
Really?
been so long. I can't even remember the last movie I saw in a theater prior to this one that I saw last night.
I think for me, there's been one in the interim, but it was Endgame before the pandemic, and then, but I think I maybe went and saw Spider-Man. Can't remember.
Oh, I did see No Way Home.
Yeah,
in a theater.
I think I saw it in the theater, but yeah. that was able to draw me out. But something else was able to draw me out,
which was
Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons, which I saw on your recommendation because you saw it and loved it.
And I said we should talk about it. I didn't say I loved it. I said it's worth your time.
Okay,
right?
You didn't love it?
I thought it was a really good movie.
Okay.
I thought it was, an 8 out of 10. So it's on that borderline between like and love for me. I wish some narratives like this, and I don't want to talk all flaws because it's a good movie.
Yeah.
You should go see it. I want to see more of these. This team was good. The people who made it understood D&D. They understood the jokes of D&D. But the plot, I just wanted a little more. I wanted to take the plotting just a little more seriously.
Okay.
And this type of movie that is not something the movie needs is a super tight plot.
I'm interested to hear probably later on.
Yes.
How you would have changed the plot.
Okay, I'm not sure that I'll tell the things that bothered me.
Yeah.
But regardless, so you loved it.
This is the part of the show where everyone's like, Dan is a jerk. He's gonna have hated this movie. I loved the movie.
Okay,
I thought it was great.
I kind of thought you might hate it because I have trouble telling. My enjoyment of films tends to run pretty solidly down the center of the science fiction fantasy fandom's enjoyment of something. Like things that they enjoy, I tend to like.
Yeah.
And so it's like if we plotted that, you're just like a scatter plot. It's like something a shotgun to the graph.
There's very little like discernible pattern to the things that I love and the things that I don't. This one worked for me.
Okay.
It worked really well, which is interesting because more than anything else, it felt like a Marvel movie.
Okay, yeah.
But the kind of really fun, worthwhile Marvel movie that Marvel themselves haven't made in several years.
Right. This is Thor Love and Thunder if Thor Love and Thunder were Thor Ragnarok. How's that for...
That's a very long way of saying this was Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah. So it is doing a lot of things very right. And
a lot of things. We do need to point out, dear listener, that we are going to spoil this movie.
Yes.
We haven't gotten to spoilers yet.
Yep.
Unless the fact that we liked it is somehow a spoiler for you. But yeah, I thought that the acting in particular, like Hugh Grant, is phenomenal.
He is really good.
He's great in everything he does. And I really love that he is in his kind of old con artist phase.
Yes.
Like Paddington 2 and The Gentleman.
Yep.
And now this, he was okay as young rom-com lead.
Yep.
He is stellar as old conniving bastard. Right.
Yes.
He's found a niche that works so well for him. And every scene he's in, he can deliver the weirdest, goofiest dialogue in a way that you're like, yeah, there's gravitas to this story. But also Chris Pine is incredible.
Chris Pine treats it seriously.
Michelle Rodriguez is great. She's basically playing Drax, but does a really good job.
She is really good at that. Like the Barbarian is so hard to do in this sort of this fantasy sword and sorcery thing. The Barbarian's usually just not a good character.
Yeah.
And in this, she's great.
Well,
she's funny, but also touching, but also authentic. And
what really made it work is, and I assume that a lot of this was her decision as an actor, is she plays it laconic, right? She is not the big blustering, bring me another flagon of mead kind of character. She is the strong, silent background character who will crack jokes when necessary, but... And I compared her to Drax, which isn't entirely fair because Drax is funny because he doesn't know he's funny.
Yeah.
She's making jokes on purpose because she's very smart.
Yes.
But she was great. Justice Smith was great too.
Yeah.
And he hasn't really been in as much of the build-up because he's not as big of a name. But I've loved him in his like TV shows and stuff that he's done. The Get Down was phenomenal. And he really sells it as the kind of very insecure wizard guy.
He really was good. But even I don't know the actor's name. The full of himself paladin.
The paladin,
just
Reggae Gene Page,
is great.
He was great, and he's the one going into it that I assumed was going to be terrible because all the trailers, he looks so cliche.
Yep.
And then you get into the movie and realize, oh, he's cliche on purpose, and they know it, and they're leaning right into it.
See, that's what I said when I said they know the D&D tropes, right? They know, like, the bard being useless is like such a thing, and it is so good in this to have the heroic bard who is useless. They're not totally useless, obviously, but you know, like calling it out. What do you bring to the team? Like, why are you here? You have a loot.
Well, and I do like the way they sidestepped some of the bad cliches, right?
Yes.
Like the joke on the internet is that the bard seduces everyone.
Yes.
Which is never really matched my experience of any bard character.
No.
They have a high charisma, but that's not what they do. And this movie ignored that. It stayed away from the obvious cliches and went for the fun cliches.
Yes.
And addressed them in a really good way. And this is maybe where we're going to start spoilers.
Yeah.
So
I think we've done a little bit, but this is full-on spoilers. Full-on spoilers from here.
One of the things that I love, and I'm going to say these two things, and then we can discuss them in whatever order we decide. I thought it was really incredible the way that they captured the feel of what it's like to be in a D&D campaign.
Yes.
Right? But also very funny, maybe in an unintentional way, that they got the rules of D&D so incredibly wrong. Right?
Well,
the very first combat scene that we see is the barbarian using an improvised weapon to by herself take out 10 guards in a couple of rounds. That would never happen in a game of D&D.
I disagree.
What?
I looked up their stat sheets. Their stat sheets are total bunk. Like, I don't know who put these together. They're the official ones.
Yeah.
But she's 17th level. Okay? 17th level barbarian.
I figured they had to be pretty high level.
With, like, we're going to get nerd out, but you've got lots of cleave skills and things that, like, you kill one person, you immediately attack the one next to you, right? You've got multiple attacks, and you're fighting minions who have one hit die, perhaps, so that your weapon can kill them in a stroke.
I suppose.
Yeah, maybe two, right? Like, that's totally legit. Particularly at the beginning of a campaign where you're like, oh, you got a bunch of minions, go mow them down.
Beginning of a campaign, you're not going to be 17th level.
No, but no, you can be. I've done plenty of campaigns where it's like, here's campaign number 2, number 3, right? Like, this is the beginning of an arc in a campaign. Like, I'm okay with that one. What I like the nods toward trying to do the rules, like they're using actual spells. They're using actual monsters from the monster manual.
Yes, but that's the lore of D&D.
Yeah, okay.
It's the rules that fell apart for me.
They did the lore right.
They showed wild shape the way everyone wants wild shape to work, and it never actually works.
Yes.
Right? She turns in the one big chase scene.
Yes.
She goes through like 7 different animal forms, and she does them instantly. And that's what everyone wants wild shape to be, and it isn't.
Well, I'll agree on that one, except I think that's what Wild Shape should be.
I 100% agree with you.
And so I feel like I agree with you. Maybe they got the rule set wrong, but D&D doesn't have, like, the lore is what they should pay attention to for this movie. They should not pay attention to that. I think they should jettison that and be like, yeah, the rules are an imperfect way to play this lore and characters.
Granted. The reason that stood out to me is what I am hoping happens is, first of all, that we'll get a lot more D&D and fantasy movies, but also I'm hoping this brings people into the hobby.
Yes.
And I worry that someone's going to be like, okay, I want to make a druid character. Wait, what do you mean I can't wild shape into an owl bear?
She, on her stat sheet, I looked it up. It says wild shape, and it gives the actual rules for wild shape, can turn into this to this, or an owl bear. On her stat sheet, it says that's she's got. And in D&D rules, you could make that happen. Like there's you've had a wish at level 15 or whatever, and you've wished, I wish that I can be an owlbear when I wild shape. That's within the purview of like what a limited wish would do.
I mean, at level 17, I'm willing to grant that has happened, right?
But it's the fast changing, right? Like that's, I haven't played in a while. It's the going through a bunch of different animals.
Going through a bunch of them, being able to use wild shape a zillion times. I suppose if she's a, moon druid, whatever that one's called.
Well, she
at
casts
high enough level.
No spells, right?
Yeah.
That's the one thing that I disagree with you on that stuff. I'm like, whatever. Who cares about that? But the fact that the bard doesn't have any spells.
Yeah. And he sings a few times, but there's no magical effects attached to it.
And they're apparently a 17th level, like they're all between like 16th and 18th. At least it was their 5th edition stat sheets. I haven't played a lot of 5th edition, but they're listing them at 18 hit dice.
So was Simon level 17? Because that is nonsense.
Yeah. So like they're listing them by their hit die as if they're monsters.
Okay.
Right? For these stat sheets. So if someone has 18 hit dice, that means they're at level 18, right?
I believe so.
The human character or humanoid. So yes, but then it lists his spells as only the ones he cast in the show. It's like, he's like 17 die 8 hit dice. His spells are Bixby's Grasping Hand, Dimension Door, and this other thing. And it's like, okay. And then it lists like the lady who's the evil red wizard. It's like, and she can cast Time Stop and Bixby's Grasping Hand. I'm like, there's a hole between a 9th level spell and a 3rd level spell.
Which
she might have access to some other stuff.
Maybe should be filled at some point. Yeah, watching it, I'm like, okay, the druid is clearly very high level. The barbarian's very high level. The bard feels like maybe just an expert character instead of like a character class.
Yeah.
Simon was like a 1st level wizard who was trying to grow up.
He has Bixby's Grasping Hand. I can put him at like a 9th level wizard, right? He's just he's muddled through it. He's got like a low stat, and he's just like
Yeah. The other thing, not to harp on this topic too much, but the other thing that really stood out as being a very weird interpretation of it was when the dragon shows up, they run away. And I'm like, no D&D group runs away from a fight. You have to try so hard to convince your players, this is not a fight you can win. Please run away.
Particularly if you're a group of near epic level characters and there's a dragon. I'm there with you on that one.
During the phase where they have the GM character, like level 20 paladin who's hanging out with them, they're like, oh, you gave us the paladin for this fight because you want us to actually take down the dragon.
Yeah.
That said, put all that aside.
Okay.
I genuinely loved all of the nods toward the actual way that people play the game.
Yes.
Rules aside.
Yeah.
For example, the scene with the bridge. Every game group has this where you're like presented with a puzzle and you immediately screw it up and the GM's like, crap, I got to think of some way to get them across this thing. Oh, you've got a portal gun. And they're like, and then, the second half of that is that now the poor GM, in order to salvage his storyline, has given them a magic item that is far more powerful than he realized, and they abuse the living hell out of it for the rest of the campaign. Like, that was so true to how D&D is actually played.
That was. The portal gun is one of the things I don't like.
Really?
Because now I like how they use it. I like how clever they are with it.
Mm-hmm.
But the crap, we just broke the bridge. Oh, look, a magic item is one of the things that undermines the narrative structure for me.
100%.
Yes.
It is bad storytelling, except that every game master has been in that situation. And my headcanon is that they were specifically trying to include a moment where the players have derailed the GM's campaign, and he is trying to find a weird kludge to keep the story going. I don't know if that's true, but that's how it felt to me, and I loved it so much for that reason.
Be genius if it were true, but it would still undermine the story of this story. Like, right? The narrative of this story.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I liked so much. What would they got to... I was fine with because they worked it into the joke. You'd have to be able to talk to the dead. Oh, well, actually, I can do that. Was funny. And so I bought that you have this magic item that is incredibly powerful because it has unlimited uses.
Yeah. The speak with dead spell, but unlimited.
Yeah. But I was okay with that one, but it just kept happening. It's like, here's the thing that you need right now. It means that like the story, this is what holds it back from the higher rating. The right now it's a good movie that I fully recommend. The other big thing for me is, and maybe this just plays into D&D campaign stuff, but the villain's plan was so dumb, and the villains like the whole thing with the villain was dumb, and I just can't get past like the fact that they look back and there's lightning coming from the sky, and they're able to, number one, cross that distance instantly. After, that's when they look, if you've been on a boat, you're 15 minutes out, a half hour out.
Ways,
yeah.
And then they are able to clear the people out of the thing.
Yes.
Instantly.
Not beyond that, and this is my biggest problem. They think that dropping money outside is going to clear the crowd who live in a fantasy world faster than red lightning and smoke coming from an evil wizard, right? If that place can get cleared, it's cleared the moment that smoke comes down. And so in the flashback we've shown, people cannot run away from the smoke. That's an aspect of the smoke. Look at all these people running. The smoke gets them.
No way they can get away from it.
And this isn't like the whole, like this... And that whole sequence legitimately undermined the movie while I was watching it. It's not like, oh, look at goofy plot hole. It's like, I wanted this evil wizard to be a good bad guy evil wizard. And I wanted this part to work. And it just did not. And it kind of manifests all these little problems through it where it's like, the acting is great. The lore is great. The jokes are great. The plot, well... we'll do what we need to do do the plot that people expect us to do, to have. And that bothered me a little bit. But there are other excellent parts about the plot. When they pull off their little, their mini heist to get into the treasure room, how they pull that off, mixed with getting there and it's not where they thought it was, all perfect. Just a really excellent scene. So some of the, really tight writing all the way through there that I liked. So.
Yeah, they did some good stuff. I didn't really have the problems with the ending that you had. I agree with you completely.
Right, it just didn't undermine the film.
But for me, it felt like a plausible D&D campaign, even though it was kind of a bad story.
Right.
And that's a very backhanded compliment, but it worked for me.
I mean, other parts of it worked very well. Like this is an example of how to do what Rise of Skywalker wanted to do, which is I need to get this thing to solve the problem at the end. Yeah. And in this, I never felt like, I'm just MacGuffining after MacGuffin. It's like, for some reason, it works for me to be like, all right, we have the Speak with Dead. Let's go find this. That leads us to this. This guy helps us get it. Then we take this and do this thing. All just worked. And you do that a lot in D&D. Yeah. Well, to get through the door, you're going to need the Helm of Disjunction. Good luck finding it.
I do really like, speaking of the tight plotting, the way that they actually defeated the sorceress in the end.
Yes, that was well done.
Was laid in there step by step from the very beginning of the movie.
It was.
Here's the little invisibility thing that the girl has. Here's 2 reminders that she has it. Here's the little anti-magic bracelet. And here's how it works. And here's a bunch of extra ones on a wall. Like, without being obvious about it, they
seeding
laid all of the
idea
pieces.
Is that he makes plans. That's the value of him. I would have liked a little more on that. Yeah. His character worked, but just something was just a little shade off, and I'm not even sure if I can put my finger on it for what it is.
I don't know. The one part of the ending that was too much for me.
Yeah.
As much as I said earlier, it's like a Marvel movie, but fantasy. They basically did the "we have a Hulk" scene almost word for word. Like, he could have just said, "we have an owl bear," and then over there we see the owl bear say "puny god" and smash the sorceress into the ground. Like, they ripped off that specific 30 seconds from the Avengers.
Yep.
Whole cloth, which felt like they could have been a little more interesting about it. But also the kind of jokey feel, and I've seen the movie be getting kind of dinged for this in reviews. Movie critics and audiences who have never played D&D are like, wait a minute, this fantasy movie, it isn't epic, it doesn't take itself seriously, it is full of jokes. And everyone who's played D&D is like, they're all full of jokes. It's amazing that we got this far and were as successful as they were.
Yes.
Because the people at the table are constantly cracking jokes. That felt incredibly true.
It did for me too. It felt very authentic. And when I was a kid, little baby Brandon, I liked the Harper novels, the Forgotten Realms Harper novels, and leaning into that lore. It's an excellent part of their lore for this type of story, and I really liked that aspect of it. I'm like, hey, and I assume the in jokes were something that you enjoyed as a DM. The appearance of the Saturday morning cartoon cast.
Oh man. That was the one laugh out loud moment for me.
Yeah.
And everyone in the theater with me, I think, was a D&D nerd because they were laughing at all the same stuff. I was the only one. I didn't hear anyone else laugh out loud at that.
You were the only one old enough to be like, hey!
I think I might have been the only one old enough to be like, I used to watch that cartoon when I was a kid.
Yeah. Like, I saw them in the back the first time that they were on. I'm like, that's the paladin or the cavalier, whatever his name is, the guy that had the weird
the armor
costume
and the kind of thing,
isn't it? Oh, that's a cool nod. And then the barbarian kid finds the axe or the hammer or whatever. He finds a weapon. Yeah, and I'm like, hey, they're doing it on purpose. The barbarian
kid finds the axe. Was the first time I saw it, and I'm like, wait. Are they doing the cartoon? And then you watch his group run away.
Yes.
And there's the nerd kid with the big green conical wizard hat. And I'm like, oh, they're absolutely doing this. So, that's the greatest thing.
That was perfect. I mean, technically, I think they were in Greyhawk, and this is Forgotten Realms. Going nerdy, you gotta,
They've ruined everything.
Yeah. But no, good tone, good,
I loved Bradley Cooper's little cameo.
What was Bradley Cooper's cameo?
He was Marleman. He was the halfling.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Didn't recognize him.
I did not.
It was an uncredited cameo too.
Okay.
He wasn't in the credits.
No,
I thought that worked well. I like the fact that his new wife was also a giant barbarian woman, and they never made a joke about it. Yep. It's just obvious that he has a type, and they just let that joke
that she does too
stand on its own. Yeah, and then at the end, she's like, "Oh, hey, another halfling."
Yep.
Yeah. So like, it was obvious from the very beginning. As soon as he's like, "I've got this tablet of reawakening," like obviously we know he's not going to bring his wife back. Right?
Yeah. So this is one of the things I was wrong about. that I call, like, at the beginning of the movie, I'm like, all right, here's what our plot is going to be. I thought it would be he gets to have the moment with her. And she says, thank you for raising our child. I'm at peace, whatever. Like, I thought there would be a moment like that, because in this sort of narrative, there almost always is.
Well,
a moment like that.
They did that moment in flashback.
Yeah.
Where if you love something, you just got to let it go.
Right.
Whatever she said about the dragonfly.
Yes. When she actually said that, I leaned over to Emily and said, metaphor. And Emily's like, what? I'm like, yeah. But it was a little
the moment when they make it back to Neverwinter after the escape and see the daughter, and she runs to Holga instead of to her father. I immediately knew she was going to be the one to die, and they'd have to use the tablet on her instead of the mom.
That was, you had to, at the beginning, you're like, all right, who are they going to bring back? Or is the tablet like, and then they did the thing where they're like, some people don't want to come back. So you might be in a better place, which I'm like, why is this here? Right? Like, even still, I'm not quite sure why that's there.
That's there so that the audience feels better about the fact he didn't bring his wife back.
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah. But like, that only raised the question to me of, well, is she? Like, who knows? The D&D cosmology.
It did make me think for a minute, like, are they going to bring her back and she's going to be pissed? Like,
yeah.
But yeah, I am sad that the paladin wasn't with them longer. He was funny. He was one joke, and so I can understand why they didn't keep him around.
I think he was there the perfect amount of time. Personally. So I don't know.
The rest of the group is more interesting. Absolutely.
What did you think of the tiefling?
Tiefling, I liked the tiefling. Again, she had one power, which was wild shape,
and she didn't use it. She used it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like when they're in the Underdark and they're running across the bridge, the one character who falls is the one who can turn into a bird.
Yeah,
and she doesn't.
And she's not a bird already. Like, I see a dragon. Everyone's running. I am a fast animal.
Yeah, turn into a horse.
Yes.
And put Simon on your back because he's the slow one.
Yep.
Like, they only had her use her wild shape really in 3 scenes. And beyond that, it was nothing, which was weird. She also felt like, and she's only like 20 years old.
Yes.
She couldn't hold up to the rest of them in terms of acting.
Yeah,
and she kind of felt out of her depth.
I agree with you. I noticed that, but I think they leaned into it on purpose, and she was leaning into it. Just this kind of, I'm withdrawn and whatnot. Yeah, and I'm an outsider, and so it worked really well.
It does, and the group dynamic didn't really need or have room for another really vocal person. I thought she did a wonderful job. I have to say, but she's up against Michelle Rodriguez, Chris Pine, and Justice Smith, who I think are all phenomenal.
Yeah,
and she held her own as the quiet, withdrawn kind of introvert at the table. Right? She reminded me of when the one time I convinced my wife to play D&D with me, and she's like, "Oh, there's a character who can turn into a rabbit. I'm gonna be the druid, and I'm gonna turn into cute animals." And didn't really participate in the story, but just turned into animals.
Was I there? Was that the campaign I was for? Therefore, and Dawn went and cleaned the kitchen while we were playing, and would just call things out periodically.
Yes,
yeah,
that was the one. I actually 3 times in our very long marriage together, I have convinced her to role play. One of them she spent cleaning the kitchen. One of them she spent playing Yahtzee with herself with the dice, and the other one was while we were still dating, and I can't even remember what happened in that one.
That's when Audrey, if your daughter ever listens to this, threw my shoes in the bathtub.
In the bathtub, which is obviously where shoes go.
Yeah. I think she was collecting everyone's shoes and throwing them in the bathtub. So
yeah. And every pillow in the house.
That's right.
So the druid worked for me in that sense. I did like her. I feel bad now that I'm like, she wasn't a good actor. She was. She was just in very, very troublesome company to try to stand out in.
If you were a D&D character class in real life, what is your class?
Oh, like how would I describe myself
Yeah.
in D&D terms?
Yep.
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I gotta say bard, right? Because I'm a storyteller.
Yeah, that's what I was watching this. I'm like, am I
Yeah.
the bard? I don't sing. You sing really well.
I am a singer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we came over to your house and did karaoke.
Yeah.
With my family and you and Emily.
Yes,
and
my
Joel,
son. Mm-hmm.
and you and Joel just played on your Steam Decks.
We
the
pulled
whole
out
time.
Steam Decks, and I was playing Doom, and he was playing
Hades.
And you were singing a song about hell, and it was actually pretty.
Flagpole Sitta, and it was perfect.
Yep. I was just there for moral support for Emily, who likes to have her family there when she does karaoke. She's a very good singer. So I pulled out the Steam Deck. My son bought a Steam Deck, and so I had
with his own money.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so I'm like, and then he keeps playing it, and it's like a.
Oh, so he bought it first, and you were like, I think I need one of those.
I might need one of those.
Very nice.
Basically a Switch with all my PC
Switch
games.
with all your Steam games on it.
Yeah.
I think if I had to describe myself as a D&D class, it would be Bard.
Yep.
But when I play D&D, I am usually a Ranger.
Okay.
I will always, in any role-playing game, I will always go to the pet class because that is what excites me. I think that it's very fun.
You don't think there's any paladin or cleric to you? No cross-classing?
I mean, I'm in the bishopric of my ward, so there's got to be some cleric in there somewhere, right? Probably more cleric than paladin.
Okay.
If I'm a paladin, I have definitely spec'd wrong.
Okay.
I don't have enough points in Constitution to be a good paladin.
Because I could see that I have a level or two of paladin. That whole crusade sort of for certain, I don't know, but possibly. The thing people get wrong about me is they assume every writer is a great scholar, right? Like, if they're going to put you in Harry Potter houses, they will be like, oh, you must be Ravenclaw, or things like that. And no,
some writers are.
Some definitely are.
But
my wife
is not inherent.
My wife is definitely like this. Like, my wife would be wizard. That would be her class.
Okay.
Right? I'm not taking
absolutely see that about her.
I'm talking, just kind of obviously doesn't have spells, but she loves to dig into a topic and into a book. And if you say something she's interested in, she will go and find the book about that thing to read it to. Yeah.
I almost said wizard for me because of the kind of book learning nerd aspect of it.
Yeah.
My wife would definitely be a bard as well.
Yeah.
Did I tell you she's going back to school?
You
as
did.
A vocal performance major.
Yeah.
So we're both bards.
Yep.
What about you? So a couple levels of paladin.
I think I'm bard mostly, right? Like, there might be a paladin in there, but when I play one of two archetypes. Either I play whatever wizardy thing I can get, like I want to wizard. I'm okay with cleric. Clerics can wizard in interesting ways.
Yeah.
When I say wizard, have access to a lot of interesting spells that can match lots of situations.
Yeah.
So I prefer that to sorcerer because I want to have a bunch of things that I could potentially do. But the other archetype is the rogue who convinces everyone he's a wizard. Yes. The rogue who pretends to be a wizard. So those are my main archetypes. So.
Yeah, I remember one of the games that we put together in college that didn't last very long is we played a Rifts campaign.
Yeah.
And we're like, you weren't there the day we made characters. And so we looked at the list we had and we're like, we don't really have a tank yet. And so we gave you kind of a very paladin-esque noble knight warrior kind of thing. And it did not fit you at all.
I did play Farg, the dwarven brawler once, and I had a lot of fun because I could really ham up the character. That's where, if I can't min-max the rules, I will just ham up personality.
Yeah.
But we've talked at length about how we should be careful not to let both of us do that at once.
Now I kind of want to, I wonder who out there of the listeners is going to create character sheets for us.
Oh, character sheets.
Mostly bards,
Mm-hmm.
a couple levels of paladin, a couple levels of cleric.
Yep. I had to get our timer.
Our
went
timer
black.
die.
Yeah. So okay, good. That's all I need to know.
Yay!
So one of my favorite Onion articles is where it's from the early 2000s, and it says Bill Gates gives self 18 intelligence, 19 charisma. And you go and you see his character sheet, he's crossed them out and added one to each of them. And it's like the name of it's like Bilbo of the Gate People is his character sheet. And it's like, and it has a whole article about how he decided he finally thinks he's achieved having an extra point of intelligence and charisma or whatever. I'm remembering it a little slantwise, but yeah. So
that's delightful.
Did you see the old D&D movie?
The old one, yes, with like Marlon Wayans in it,
mm-hmm.
Or Damon Wayans, whichever Wayans brother. Yes, I did.
How does this compare to that?
Well, the old one is abominable,
and
this one is wonderful.
I went and saw that one with Scar, who's here. But yeah, you and I saw it after writing group, didn't we? Do you remember that?
I have a vague memory.
Yeah. Huh. It was after writing group one time at Scar's house.
Watched. Did you go to a theater,
or was it
one of the ones we just watched a movie at Scar's house?
No. After D&D or whatever, Scar and I are like, hey, let's go see a movie. And so I think it was just the two of us. We went out and saw D&D because we wanted to see it, and it is bad enough to be good, right? Like the old D&D movie,
maybe
I think it is. Jeremy Irons is chewing the scenery, and he knows what kind of movie he's in.
You can tell that he hated every second of his involvement with that, and still turned in a stellar scene chewing performance. Right? Mm-hmm. Like he didn't take it seriously, but he knew what it was, and he knew how to do it right.
Yep.
But one of the problems I have, and one of the reasons I like this new one so much, is that old one really did kind of take itself very seriously in a way that did not fit the tone of D&D.
Which is what makes it, I think, a good bad movie. It's like it's trying so hard, and it's not getting there. But I will say one thing that movie has over this one.
Okay.
I believe if you do a count of Dungeons and or Dragons,
that one has more.
That one has more of both.
This one really only has one dungeon.
Yep.
If you count the Underdark.
Yep.
And 2 dragons.
Two dragons. One in a flashback.
3 because there was a flashback.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you count the stone dragon? In your dragon count, I think it's a half point.
I have to count.
It's an animated stone dragon. You get a half point for that.
They did manage to get a dragon-esque thing into the final fight, which
is appropriate.
Yeah.
And the dragon that they had is better than any of the dragons. This is apparently a real dragon from D&D lore.
It is. The big fat dragon.
Yep. And my 15-year-old son, who's played D&D, was sitting next to me, and that's the point where he lost it. He loved that dragon.
Did he recognize it from the lore?
Nope.
He just thought
like, Chonky Dragon is the coolest thing, because that exemplifies what makes this movie great. It's like, what interesting choice can we make? In this situation for the characters, rather than what is the obvious choice. And they made the interesting choice multiple times throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And this was definitely the interesting choice.
Well, and the Chonky Dragon works in part because of that flashback where we see a real dragon, right?
Yeah.
If the only dragon in the story was the weird chubby one that can't fly and can't breathe fire very well, then that would have been weird. It might have been disappointing. But because they showed us a real dragon earlier, our brains are like, okay, dragons are normal in this world. And then you can show us the weird one and have the main dragon be the off-kilter quirky one, and it still doesn't feel wrong. It fits perfectly.
The old Dungeons and Dragons movie, though, is all about getting the crown of controlling dragons or something like that. And there's like hundreds of dragons, bad CGI dragons. And so they do have more dragons. I will also point out the point where they get away from the big fat dragon with the lighting the finger and things like that was the moment
I didn't understand
in the movie where multiple people in our audience said, "What?"
Yeah.
That one needed more workshop. I think what they're saying is the dragon can't ignite his flame. But that just does not click and does not work. And if he's breathing methane at them.
Well, and I also didn't understand, like, when he says, wait, is that salt water? Okay, I have a plan. Does that mean I know we're under the sea?
Yeah.
Or does that mean, wait, there's going to be a chemical reaction with the salt and the gas and the... It was very weird.
See, this is when I talked about something being off about his character, that's the thing that is missing, right? Is he's valuable because he's good at plans. Was he ever not good at plans? Did he lose that skill? Is he trying again, right? Because the guy's like, I see a Harper. And I'm like, but he's always been making the plans. He hasn't ever lost that.
Well, right? the Harper thing was less about the plans and more about his leadership code, right?
No, it was his leadership at that point. He's like, I see a Harper because he's like, oh, what if we did this? And the guy's like, I see a Harper. I'm like, yeah, but that's what he's been doing the whole time.
I thought he had a good character arc, but it did not include his competence in any way.
Yeah. And he did have it, like, coming to understand it. I will point out, excellent character arc. I left my daughter, and that got my wife killed. Now my daughter's surrogate mother is something I need to sacrifice to bring back for her good.
The really line that crystallized his character arc for me, and by extension the whole movie, was when he said, I wasn't trying to bring your mother back, I was trying to bring my wife back.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is genuinely great writing and great characterization, and a wonderful moment.
Yep. And then, I mean, that's not an arc I've seen anywhere else.
Yeah.
And it's not an arc you can do outside of fantasy. And it's kind of hey, you're leaning into what makes fantasy great, but there's genuine emotion. That whole thing was good. But there's something just missing in the whole returning to be a Harper sort of thing that I did like the reveal that he stole the money, that caused the thing, right? But something just, I wanted something to click just a little bit more. And it's hard to say, hey, this was a good job. Could be better.
They gave the, like, regain your confidence arc to Simon instead of to him.
Yep.
They gave the become competent arc to Simon instead of to him.
Yep.
And it kind of felt like they split the one character arc over those two characters.
Right. And that's true. And Simon, like, become confident also didn't quite ever click. It seems like the sort of thing you have to put in this movie so he has an arc. But I'm like,
well, and as soon as the grandfather showed up, I'm like, no, that's him. That's clearly him in the future, or whatever they're trying to say. And then when it was revealed, I only had to defeat myself. Like, yes, but
how did you do that?
Please connect more dots.
What made you able to defeat yourself? That's the important part, not the fact that you slapped a dude. Right? Like, what about you? Is it that they're right that you can only be competent if the situation is very stressful? Because that's what it seemed to be saying. Means you didn't learn anything because you've always been like that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the same sort of little issue I'm having there. But very small issues in a great movie that you should all go see.
Yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it, far more than I expected to. I'm very excited to show it to my D&D nerd son. It's awesome. And I very much am hoping that we get more movies. How's that, Ben?